It's October 15, 2014. In the city of Reynosa, Mexico, a doctor named Maria del Rosario Fuentes Rubio is just finishing her shift at a local clinic. She walks out into the daylight, then vanishes. Hours later, her Twitter account that was once used to warn the public about cartel violence starts posting photos. But the photos are not of cartel members. They are of her, tied up, beaten, dead, and alongside the images, a message: shut up, or this will be you. This is what happens after you mess with the Mexican cartel, and here are 8 more people who met similar and worser fates. Armando Linares. Armando Linares was a journalist, a father, and the co-founder of the news outlet Monitor Michoacán, a small but powerful voice fighting corruption in one of Mexico's most dangerous states. As the director of the outlet, Linares reported on everything from extortion by local law enforcement to political figures allegedly involved in embezzlement and influence trafficking. His outlet's investigative reporting focused particularly on 2 powerful figures: the former mayor of Zitácuaro, Carlos Herrera, and the former governor of Michoacán, Silvano Aureoles. Their corruption was exposed through articles detailing mismanagement of public funds, bribery, and ties to the Mexican cartel. But in a place where silence is bought with blood, those stories made powerful enemies. Linares' fight for transparency came at a time where the state of Michoacán was plagued by cartel violence and political corruption, and it also came at a great cost. On 31st January 2022, his colleague, Roberto Toledo, who worked as a cameraman and editor for Monitor Michoacán, was shot and killed while recording a video column at the office of a local lawyer. Roberto had been reporting on the same corruption issues that Linares had been, and his murder was meant to be a chilling message, but Linares wasn't backing down. He posted a video on the outlet's Facebook page addressing Toledo's death. Through tears and shaking hands, he promised to continue their work, saying, "We don't carry weapons. We only have a pen and a notebook to defend ourselves." But those words rang hollow as threats began to escalate. By February, the threats grew more direct. Linares received warnings, warning him to stop his reporting or face the consequences. Frightened, Linares consulted with Mexico's Federal Mechanism for the Protection of Human Rights Defenders and Journalists, a government initiative designed to protect journalists under threat. The plan was to enroll him in a federal protection program, but no immediate actions were taken to safeguard him. As the months passed, the threats didn't stop. Linares knew he was on borrowed time, but his commitment to exposing the truth kept him going. By March 2022, the stakes couldn't have been clearer. He was not just a journalist, he was a target. He had even reported rumors that he was linked to the Jalisco Nueva Generación cartel, a powerful criminal group active in the region. While Linares vehemently denied these accusations, the suggestion alone was enough to further isolate him and paint him as a dangerous enemy to the cartels. On March 15, 2022, the inevitable happened. As Linares stood outside his home in Zitácuaro, gunmen ambushed him, shooting him at least 8 times. He collapsed before he could even be rushed to the hospital. The authorities, too late to act, confirmed his death. The Michoacán State Prosecutor's Office opened an investigation under protocols for crimes against journalists, but it was clear this was just another notch in Mexico's disturbing record of murdered reporters. Armando Linares was the 8th journalist killed in Mexico in 2022 alone, a record-breaking year for the country. And it only fueled the growing concern over the state of press freedom in Mexico, where journalists continue to risk everything just to do their job. The government promised investigations, but just like the case of Roberto Toledo, justice was never served. Turns out, not only journalists mess with Mexican cartels, this next victim of the cartel was a fisherwoman, and she met a worse fate than Linares. Minerva Perez. Minerva Perez was more than a fisherwoman. She was the head of Baja California's fishing industry chamber, who spoke out against corruption and illegal practices that endangered both the economy and the environment. Minerva had spent years fighting to regulate the fishing industry, but in the process, she uncovered something even darker: the cartel's infiltration into the industry. The state of Baja California, especially its coastal regions, had long been plagued by cartels that controlled everything from drug trafficking to human smuggling. But in recent years, the cartels had expanded their operations into the seafood trade. Fishermen, seafood distributors, and even restaurants were being forced to pay extortion money just to keep their businesses afloat. Minerva became a vocal critic of the practice, speaking out about how cartels had started demanding protection payments for every pound of seafood sold along the coast. Her complaints didn't stop there. Minerva had raised alarms over the environmental damage caused by illegal fishing practices. As it turns out, cartel-controlled operations went beyond extortion. They also disregarded regulations meant to preserve marine life. But despite Despite the efforts of leaders like Minerva, the government seemed indifferent to the problem. She publicly complained about the lack of action and the government's reluctance to address cartel influence in the fishing sector. She called out officials for turning a blind eye to the widespread extortion that had long been affecting everyone from small fishermen to large seafood companies. Despite Minerva's growing profile as a whistleblower and advocate for the fishing community, the situation continued to worsen. In early July 2024, just hours before her death, she once again voiced her frustrations during an emotional press conference, detailing how cartels had escalated their grip on the industry. She described how local authorities and business owners had long struggled to fend off the increasing violence and threats, but no one had dared to challenge the cartels directly for fear of retaliation. Unfortunately, Minerva's bravery would cost her dearly. On the afternoon of the 8th of July, 2024, Minerva Perez was shot and killed outside her home in Ensenada. Unidentified gunmen ambushed her in what authorities described as a direct assassination. Several bullets riddled her body, and her death was confirmed almost immediately. In the wake of her murder, Baja California officials, including Governor Marina del Pilar and Mexico's Secretary of Agriculture, condemned the killing and promised investigations. But as with so many other cases of cartel violence in Mexico, Minerva's assassination was another case in a long list of crimes that would likely go unpunished. Just like this next guy, whose body has been missing ever since he allegedly stumbled into the middle of a cartel drug transaction. David Hartley. David Hartley was the husband of Tiffany Hartley, famously known in 2010 as the widow of Pirate Lake. But before she would come to be known by that moniker, Tiffany and her husband David visited Falcon Lake in early August 2010. They were drawn by its remote beauty and the ruins of a sunken church in Old Guerrero, so they decided to return the next month for one final ride on their Sea-Doos before moving back to Colorado. Despite multiple warnings from Texas officials about cartel activity and recent attacks by armed pirates on the Mexican side of the lake, the Hartleys went on anyway. They'd discussed the risks with Border Patrol agents during their earlier visit. At the time, no civilians had been seriously harmed, and they were told their watercraft could outrun the cartel's fishing boats. Sadly, they were not told their watercraft couldn't outrun bullets. On the afternoon of the 30th of September, 2010, the couple was taking pictures of the partially submerged church when 3 boats approached at high speed. Each carried armed men. According to Tiffany, gunfire erupted without warning. As they fled on their Sea-Doos, a bullet struck David in the head, knocking him off his vehicle. Tiffany realized he was no longer ahead of her, and she turned to see him pitch forward into the lake. She circled back instinctively and found him unconscious, floating in his life vest. As she tried to hold him and stabilize herself, the attackers returned. 2 of the gunmen closed in, pointing rifles at her from less than 15 feet away. She said she made eye contact and pleaded, "Don't shoot, please, don't shoot." After a short whispered exchange in Spanish, the men backed off. Realizing David was either already dead or near death, Tiffany tried to lift his body onto her Sea-Doo. At 4 feet 10 inches and 100 pounds, she couldn't pull his 250-pound frame out of the water. She was forced to leave him behind. She later called 911, telling the operator he was thrown off the jet ski, and I couldn't pick him up to get him on mine. David's body was never recovered. In the weeks following the shooting, speculation and suspicion clouded the case. Some doubted Tiffany's version of events, and the investigation even stalled after the lead Mexican investigator was murdered. His severed head was delivered to a military post, and for 2 years, the case remained unresolved. Then, in 2012, Mexican authorities arrested Salvador Alfonso Martinez Escobedo, also known as the Squirrel, a senior Zetas cartel leader. Officials linked him to several high-profile crimes, including the Falcon Lake shooting and the murder of the original investigator. However, local U.S. authorities expressed skepticism. Martinez had not been on the original list of suspects submitted to the FBI. Despite the arrest, no one has been formally charged in David Hartley's death. The case remains open, and his body has never been found. This next victim met a similar fate, but his body was found in a horrifying condition. Chalino Sanchez. Chalino Sanchez, aka the King of the Corrido, is one of the most influential Mexican narco-corrido singers of the late 20th century. On January 25, 1992, during a performance in Coachella, California, gunfire erupted. Chalino was shot, but he shot back. In the chaos, he killed a bystander. This wasn't the first time Chalino took a life. When he was 15, he picked up a gun and killed the man who his sister. Justice in his world didn't come with badges or courtrooms. It came fast, and it came hard, and that single act set the tone for the rest of his life. Later in 1984, Chalino's brother Armando was gunned down in a Tijuana hotel. Grief pushed Chalino to write his first corrido, a traditional Mexican ballad laced with pain, pride, and revenge. One thing led to another, and Chalino got locked up for petty crimes. It was inside those prison walls Chalino found his voice. Inmates would give him their stories, and he'd turn them into corridos. He sang for killers, for victims, for ghosts. By the early 90s, Chalino was blowing up, but fame didn't make him safe. In January 1992, someone opened fire on him during a show in Coachella. Chalino pulled his gun and shot back. He survived, but a bystander didn't. After that, the paranoia set in. He started giving away his guns, sold the rights to his music for a lump sum, enough for his wife to buy a house, but nothing more. No royalties, no safety net for his kids. It was like he knew something was coming. Then came May 16, Culiacan. That night, at Salon Bugambilias, in the middle of a set, someone from the crowd handed him a note. Home video shows him reading it. His face tightens, sweat. He crumples the note and keeps singing like nothing happened. It's been called La Nota de la Muerte, the death note, because to this day, people claim that Chalino was famous for speaking out and making songs about how evil the cartels were. So this note that he was given said that he should apologize to the cartel and call off the show, or he could perform and be killed by the cartel as a consequence. The man still did the show. After midnight, Chalino left the club with family and friends. Their car was pulled over by black Chevy Suburbans. The men had badges, claimed to be state police, said their commander wanted to see him. Chalino didn't argue. He got in the car. The next morning, two farmers found him dumped beside an irrigation canal off Highway 15, blindfolded, rope marks on his wrist, 2 bullets in the back of his head. He was 31. His murder was never solved. Some say it was the cartel, others, revenge. But the truth remains, Chalino died like his corridos ended, violent, tragic, and unforgettable. Maria del Rosario Fuentes Rubio. In the shadows of cartel-dominated Tamaulipas, where the press had long gone silent, one woman dared to speak up, not with a megaphone, but with a Twitter handle, at Miyut3. That was the name Maria del Rosario Fuentes Rubio used online. By day, she was a doctor in Reynosa, caring for the wounded. By night, she became Felina, a digital sentinel feeding real-time alerts into the Valor por Tamaulipas blog, a citizen-run lifeline in a state strangled by organized crime. She posted everything the media wouldn't: shootouts, kidnappings, cartel checkpoints. She urged locals to report crimes. Her voice cut through the silence like a flare in the dark. On October 15, 2014, as she left her clinic, armed men abducted her. Hours later, the unimaginable happened. Her own Twitter account posted images of her lifeless body, followed by a chilling warning: shut up. It was a public execution. Her death was not an isolated tragedy. In 2011, 4 other citizen journalists in Tamaulipas met similar fates. Among them, Maria Elizabeth Macias, decapitated for doing what Felina did, telling the truth in a place that kills truth-tellers. Felina's murder sent shockwaves across the world, not just because she was brave, but because she was necessary. The same can be said about this next victim, who was lucky enough to survive messing with the cartel. Azucena Uresti. Azucena Uresti was a journalist, a mother, and one of the most recognized news anchors in Mexico. From the studio of Milenio Television and through the airwaves of Radio Formula, she became a trusted voice in the country. She covered politics, violence, and most notably, the terrifying power of organized crime. But in Mexico, truth can cost you your life. In August 2021, Uresti became the target of a chilling death threat. A video surfaced, filmed by masked men in military-style gear, armed to the teeth. At the center of it was a message from Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, alleged leader of the Jalisco Nueva Generacion cartel. He accused journalists of favoring rival criminal organizations in their reporting, and he named Azucena directly. He promised to kill her, and he promised to kill other journalists like her. The threat was broadcast not just to Uresti, but to every newsroom in the country. It was a declaration of war against the press. But Uresti didn't back down. She returned to the news desk. Same time, same channel, voice steady. She told viewers she would keep working out of duty. She entered Mexico's Federal Protection Program, a move that placed her under constant surveillance, but did little to ease the larger danger. Even President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, who often criticized the media, publicly condemned the threats against her. It was a rare moment of unity. To this day, Azucena still shows up on screen, not just to read the news, but to survive it. Sadly, the same can't be said for one of these next guys. Victor Avila and Jaime Zapata. Victor Avila and Jaime Zapata were federal agents on assignment, U.S. law enforcement, deep in cartel territory. They were two Homeland Security Investigations special agents working for the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, driving a government-issued black Chevrolet Suburban with diplomatic plates from Laredo, Texas to Mexico City. Their mission was routine, and their route was known. But Highway 57 turned into a war zone. As they drove through San Luis Potosí, two SUVs began trailing them, fast, aggressive. Inside were members of Los Zetas, one of Mexico's most violent drug cartels. One SUV passed them, another pulled alongside. Then came the gunfire. The agents tried to de-escalate. They rolled down their windows, identified themselves as U.S. diplomats. Victor Avila remembers saying it clearly, but the response he got was, "We don't give a f***." And the shooting didn't stop. One of the gunmen ripped open the driver's side door and shot Jaime Zapata point blank. Despite his wounds, Zapata fought back, locking the doors and trying to push through the ambush. He managed to get the vehicle into gear, bloodied, dying, and drove forward before collapsing at the wheel. Avila had been shot in the leg. He used his phone to call for help. A federal police helicopter arrived shortly after, but it was too late for Zapata. 3 bullet wounds, no time for treatment. He died inside the vehicle. The attack wasn't random. It took place at what appeared to be a fake military checkpoint. Cartel members dressed in camouflage, carrying machine guns. The Zetas claimed they mistook the agents for a rival cartel. But Avila's testimony, the diplomatic plates, and the warning shouted by Zapata all suggest otherwise. This was no accident. In the aftermath, American investigators traced the murder weapon, a WASR-10 semi-automatic rifle, back to a gun store in Dallas, Texas. It had been purchased by a known straw buyer, Otilio Osorio, whose name was flagged by the ATF months before the sale. The serial number had been scratched off. That rifle was smuggled into Mexico as part of a broader operation now mired in controversy. Operation Fast and Furious. Zapata's death ignited outrage on both sides of the border. His family demanded answers. Congress demanded accountability. And Mexican officials pointed to a deeper, unresolved problem: the unchecked flow of American guns and money into cartel hands. Victor Avila survived, but the trauma never left. Zapata didn't. His death sparked international debate. Should U.S. agents stationed in Mexico be allowed to carry firearms? Let me know in the comments section. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, then be sure to subscribe and click on this next card on your screen.